All right, so you want a Plex media server, and you don't know what you're doing, and neither do I. But let's get to it, and we'll get it figured out. So, I've been working on switching my Plex server from old hardware to interim hardware back to old hardware. So I'm doing kind of an upgrade thing here. I don't like how my old Plex server was installed. It was all kind of bare bones installation right onto Ubuntu desktop. I want to go with a full Docker setup with all the containers, and I want to run it off Ubuntu Server. So first step we need to do here is install Ubuntu Server on the hardware. So first thing we're going to do is download Balena Etcher. Click download here, and portable's going to be fine for us. I'm doing all of my configuration on a Windows machine. I've got the bare metal here to my right. That's going to be the server now for Ubuntu. For Plex. So hit the download button here. We also need to download Ubuntu Server. So Ubuntu Server download. And we're going to download that one right there. Cool. So this is going to start up. I've already downloaded this from the other day, so I'm going to cancel that. We're going to open Balena Etcher. And then once that pops up, we'll be able to make our bootable USB drive. Okay, so we're going to flash from file. We're going to choose our Ubuntu Server download. So that's the desktop version. Where did I download it? There it is, live server. Open. We're going to change our device here. This is going to show you all the stuff you don't want to change. These are all your system drives. Right now I've got a 2 gig flash card installed. That's the lowest one you can use. So put a flash card in. It doesn't matter if you formatted it or not. It's going to do that right now. So flash. Yeah, we'll let it do that. This is going to take a little bit, so we'll fast forward through here. And our next step is going to be to plug this into the computer we're using as a server, boot it to this flash drive, and then we'll install Ubuntu Server from there. Alright, so now we are successful on our Balena Etcher. We flashed this Ubuntu Server install. We're going to head over to the computer here and install it on it. Okay, so this is my current setup right here. So this big guy here is my Plex server. It's an old gaming rig of mine. It's got an i5 CPU in it with quick sync, so it transcodes pretty well. It's been working well, but I don't like how the install has. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing when I built this the first time. So it's running Ubuntu desktop with all the apps installed directly onto the OS. It's kind of all cobbled together. It's hard to keep maintained. It's hard to upgrade. This guy here is an old server computer that I'm using as an interim PC. It's does not have quick sync. It does not transcode very well, but it gets me through a couple days while I make this transition. So what I've done is everything I'm about to show you today for this computer, I've already done to this computer. And then I just have the SATA cables for the hard drives for the media mapped over to that computer so we can still watch some of our content while we're doing this changeover. So I shut this PC down. We're going to put in our boot stick, turn it on. And then over here, we are going to have to hit F8 or F12 or F11, 11 for boot menu. And we are going to boot into that multiple card reader, the USB. Hit enter. This is going to boot us into Ubuntu Server. So we're going to try or install Ubuntu Server. Hit enter. All right, so we're going to select English. We're not going to update, so it's saying there's a newer version of the installer out there. We're going to say we're good. Hit enter. Keyboard's fine. We're hitting these done backs down here. So done. Yeah, we want to do Ubuntu Server. It sees that we're connected on ETH there to 1.91. Okay. We don't need a proxy address. That's fine. Use entire disk. So we have a small 250 gig solid state that's gonna be running this. So yeah, we'll use that. Head down here to done. Storage configuration sounds great. We're eventually gonna add some media hard drives at the end of this tutorial, but for now we're good. Confirm, sure, break it all. Let's go. Okay, so here's where we gotta put in our name, Ben. This is gonna be Plex. Oh. Ooh, no capitals, all right. Plex MS, we'll call it. Pick a username, call it that, Ben again, and then, all right, so password's entered. We will go down to done. We do want open SSH. We don't need an identity for that, and we hit done. Everything here we're gonna end up installing eventually, so don't really worry about any of this. We are gonna install Docker ourselves. So just skip all through this, go down to done, and let it do its thing. All right, so this is finished now. We just need to go down to reboot. It'll come back up and we'll be good to go. Please remove installation medium. Yep, let's do that. Press enter. All right, so the last thing we have to do here is hard set the IP address of our server. So we're going to cd /etc/netplan ls. We're gonna list everything here. So there is a Wi-Fi config and a regular config. So we are gonna sudo nano the non-Wi-Fi one. So dash, and once you get started, hit tab. So install config.yaml. Enter. We have to enter our sudo password. All right, so we're gonna change this to that. So if you look here, I have Ethernet ports, or interfaces, ENP 0S25 and 0S and 2S0. So I did an IP link outside of this, and it showed that the 2S01 was up and the 0S25 was down, meaning that the cable was plugged into 2S0. So I'm going to set DHCP4 and DHCP6 to false. I'm going to set my IP address to 192.168.1.5/24, so that subnet is 255.255.255.0. My routes, this is going to be your gateway, so default via 192.168.1.1, that's my modem's address. And then my name servers for DNS are just Google's 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.4.4. We're going to save this by hitting Control X, typing in yes or Y, hitting enter. Now we're good. So we should be good to SSH into this computer now. Let's go give that a try. All right, so we're back on our Windows machine here. And as you see behind me, this Docker Media Server Ubuntu tutorial by Smart Home Beginner is what I followed to do all this. We're going to be running through basically every step that Anand here wrote. I'll link this in the description. This thing is fantastic. It's 10,000 words long. There's a ton of stuff on here. We're not going to use all of it, and there's even more he has on his GitHub. But we're going to use a lot of it, and he's the reason that I was able to get this all going. So to get started here, to get into the computer we just configured, we're going to go to terminal. So CMD. Get this up here. We'll zoom in a little bit. So we're going to SSH your username that you just created at the IP address you just created. Now we may need to restart that computer. Now that we set it up, let's see. Yes. So we're going to restart that computer, and we're going to try again here in a sec. To get out of this, you can hit Control-C, and we'll be right back. Okay, so that computer's been rebooted now. We can just hit up to do our last command here. Maybe not. Let's do some more digging. All right, well, that was embarrassing. Here is a half-hour time wasted because of one letter. SSH, well, let's click on it here. SSH, then at 192.168.1.5. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes, we do. We know this is good. Let's go. All right, so that's added. Type in our password here. I'm going to show you the error. If you roll back the tape, you'll see it too. But let's go cd/etc. Oh, we can just do this quick. Sudo nano/etc/ was it netplan /00.yaml, right? Put our password in again. Okay, so if you look back to what I did, there were two little errors. So I had that dash there, it shouldn't be there, right? Also, main big one, that dash may have been okay, I'm not sure. I had that N missing, so our network was not doing great. Now that we have a network, we are good to go. So I've set this to 1.5 and we are on it. So the first thing we want to do, now that we've installed this, is to upgrade it. So sudo apt update, I think it is. 61 packages can be upgraded. Sudo apt upgrade. Yes, I want to continue. This is just getting our system up to date. So we'll fast forward through this and start with the next step. Okay, we'll just hit OK here. Cool. All right, so let's update again, see if there's anything left. 4 can be upgraded. Let's see what they are. List upgradable. Jammy updates all. Jammy updates, Jammy updates, Jammy updates. So this is for Python 3, software properties, Ubuntu Advantage Tools, and notifier.com. So there are other ways you can force these upgrades. We don't really care that much. Just clear this. Oh. And we'll get moving. So our first step is going to be to install Docker. So let us go over here to Anand setup, and we've got step 1, get your host good. We've got our Ubuntu server. Step 2, we need to install Docker on it. So let's get this, shrink it down a bit. We already did sudo apt update. Now we need to install some certificates. So let me get this set up for always on top, and then we'll keep moving. Okay, we're set up for always on top. So essentially we're just going to walk through this. We're going to install the certs that we need. Cool. We're going to curl and grab this. So this should be the most up-to-date. Yep, this is all good here. Echo this. We're going to update again. And we will install Docker CE. All right, next we're going to verify the Docker's running. So we can do that with a sudo. Well, that's the other one. So we can just say sudo, system ctl status docker. We are running. Great. You can Control C to get out of that. We will go back to our install guide here. Next is Docker Compose. So Docker runs the containers, right? So we're creating basically pre-set up little OSs that are going to run all of our servers. So we're going to have one for Plex, we'll have one for Radar, for Sonar, for Nginx. Compose lets those things be easily set up, so we can basically force variables into the container for how we want it to set up, or how we want it to be set up, and we'll create a Docker Compose file that sets those all up for us. That's what we're going to do today. So first we'll get Docker Compose on here. Now this here, right there, I just installed 2.5. I'm going to want to take that back off because we want to get, I think it's at 2.15.1 right now. So to remove that, quick Google search, how to remove Docker Compose from terminal. I think it's just a delete. You delete a certain file here. But yeah, so sudo rm / user / local / bin / Docker Compose. All right, what we really want to do here is, and we can check this where he says latest release of Docker Compose. We're on 2.15.1. So what that looks like for us is taking this command here, going back to here, making that 2.15.1, hitting enter. Awesome. Now we're going to change our permissions for this. Cool. And next thing's going to be Nginx. So what this is going to let us do is go directly to our services, our servers from our outside internet. So you need a domain name for this. I have one that's like $7 a year. You can get those from a lot of places. You do not need a hosting service since our server is the host. So you don't need to pay extra to make that website available. You just need the domain itself. So if you're going to do all this, and we do recommend, like he says here, it's like $8 a year, $7 a year, and we're going to need Cloudflare as well. So before we get into setting up all the Nginx and making sure that all works, we need to set up some folders inside of our environment. So if we get back to our Plex here, or to our server here that we're SSH'd into, we are going to create a folder here. So sudo mkdir, we're making a directory, /home/ben, that's going to be your username, /docker. So now if we cd/home/ben and list them out, we can see we have a Docker folder right there. So now inside that Docker folder, we're going to create a few things as well. So I'm just going to move into there quick. Before we do that, we're going to set some permissions, but I'll move into Docker. Cool. So there's nothing inside of Docker right now. We're going to create an app data folder. We're going to create a Docker Compose YAML file, and we're going to create an environment hidden file here that's going to store our credentials. So first thing we're going to do is set up the app data folder. So let's just do, well, let's get some permissions on the Docker folder first. So he runs through all this. So we're going to sudo apt install ACL. Beautiful. Sudo chmod 775 home/ben/docker, and then we can just copy some things here too. So this is the 775 is directing it to some certain permissions that you'll have. Then this here is setting some other permissions up for this folder. Cool. So we should see a plus sign here. He's saying if we take a look at, there's a way to view all this. He goes through that up here. So if we do ls-alh, we'll see that we've got root ben. That's everything. There's nothing inside Docker yet. If we cd out of this, ls-alh, so Docker has root privileges. Everything else has ben, and then we've got, above us has some root privileges as well. But let's get back into Docker. Okay. All right, so yeah, you'll see that it has the plus sign here. We're going to create our env file here, so touch.env. The dot before it makes it hidden, so when you do an ls, you don't see it. Well, you don't see it now because it didn't work. You have to sudo touch.env. ls, you still don't see it. ls-a, it'll pop up. We're going to change some permissions for that. Sudo chown root.env. So you're going to need root permission to be able to view this. And then sudo chmod 600 env. All right, now if we do our ls-alh, you'll see that it's got, that env file has root permissions. It also has the plus there. So we need to edit that now. So let's sudo nano. So this squiggly line here is equivalent to /home/ben. So if you take a look at this here, cd squiggly line, It's going to take me right to that /home/ben. Same thing as cd/home/ben. Clear the line. Okay. We're cd back into Docker. So right now that we're in Docker, you could just say sudo nano.env. And we're going to put this information into there. So I've got it pre-configured for what I need. We want to back these up. So what this is, we're creating some variables that we're going to end up using inside of our Docker Compose file. So this stuff here is, it keeps it hidden, so you don't have to see your passwords and stuff in Docker Compose. So I will be putting my passwords in here. You won't be seeing it, but then I can reference them in my Docker Compose. So your time zone, look that up, change that to what you are. Your user directory, your Docker directory, and then some storage directory. This data directory is going to end up changing. So this is basically, we're going to map some stuff from our Plex server to here, or from here to our Plex server, I guess, so that the Plex server knows where its media location is. I've got some external hard drives we're going to end up mounting at the end of this. So that's going to eventually change, but for now, it gives us a good starting point. So let's exit out of that. Control X, yes to save it, hit enter. Okay. So now we're going to start with Docker Compose. So he goes over what Docker Compose is, how to run it, some commands for it. So what we need to do though is, this is where we're going to create our Docker Compose YAML file. So sudo nano, we're inside a Docker folder already, so we'll just say docker-compose.yml. Okay. First thing, version 3.9. That's the version of Docker Compose we're writing all this in so that it knows how to interpret it. We're going to set up a network. So this here is defining a few different things. So you need Docker Compose 3.5 or higher to define the networks this way. We're bridging it to our host, and then we're creating a thing called npm proxy. So what this is going to do is allow us to put all of our services on this npm proxy network, and that network's going to be on the 192.168.89 subnet. So all of our services are only going to be accessible through the npm proxy network, and then they'll be bridged out to our host. So from our host, we won't be able to access these, but we will be able to forward ports to them as needed. So that's everything there. If you wanted to change this, you absolutely could. Anand developed this extension field section here. So this makes, as he says here, makes the file a little less readable, but it does give you less lines. So all we're doing here, this is a YAML file. YAML files, the indentation of the markup language is incredibly important. So, for example, networks here is at the root level here. So we don't have any spaces from the edge. Anything inside of networks has 2 spaces in front of it. Anything inside of that has 2 spaces in front of it. So as you define things, you have to make sure that your tab, your indentation is 2 spaces in for everything. It's very important for that. So what he's doing here is creating some things that we can reference. So if there's common environment variable, this is our time zone and our user ID. This is what network it's going to reference. This is whether it would restart always or not. He explains all this in here. Essentially what it lets us do is just call something a common key core, and it would apply these attributes to that service. So certain services will either call core or apps or media, and it just saves us, this 5 lines of code. It's nothing crazy. It does simplify things a bit. It just makes it harder to read. So read through what he has here. It'll explain it a little better. And the next thing we're going to need to do is install services. This is where the bulk of our stuff comes in. So now that we have services here, the first thing we're going to do is some front-end stuff, which is starting with Nginx Proxy Manager. So this needs to be tabbed in twice. Comments don't really matter, but because we're inside of services, anything that we paste here from this Nginx needs to be tabbed in, spaced in, so that it's 2 under services. So we're going to have to go through here and make sure that's the case. Right now it's not. So and this is where you can run into trouble. You need to make sure that everything is properly spaced out. When I first did this, I messed up There's networks or ports. I had ports spaced in under networks and could not figure it out. I had to get the help of some nice guys there on the Discord that Anand links to. But this should be everything. So everything's spaced in properly. And we've got our Nginx proxy manager ready to go. It's called npm. All right, so what it's going to do is it'll have an address of 89.254, and it's going to expose ports 8080 and 80 and 443, and then it'll sit at port 81. So Control X, save, go. What we can do now is run our Docker compose file. So what that command is, let me grab it. Sudo docker compose-f. This is where it's located. That's /home/ben. Docker compose YAML. We're going to call it up, and we're going to run it as a daemon. So we hit enter. It's pulling all the stuff we need for npm and Nginx proxy manager. All right, so it is started. So we can view the services. So that was in up here. He lists out how you can use Docker and Docker sudo docker ps-a. So let me zoom out a little here so it makes sense. What we can see here is that image Nginx proxy manager latest is running, and it's getting these ports here, 443 to 443, 80 to 8081, 443 to 443. So what that means for us now is we should be able, let's get rid of all this here. We can go to 192.168.1.5:81, and look at that. We've got Nginx proxy manager. So we're going to minimize this. And you can create an account with this. We're going to log in here as the default, admin at example.com, and change me. So admin at example.com, change me. All right, we're going to change this to admin. There's my email. Oh, I changed something wrong there, but let's do a password. Current password is change me. All right, so we now have an admin role here. So the next step is going to be to get Portainer. So don't need to have this. It's just a nice web UI to see what containers are running. So as we do with each of these things, what we're going to have to do is go back to our compose file, scroll to the bottom. So you can use control down to get to each comment or to each like main thing, just get to the bottom faster. And we're going to add in here the Portainer setup. Again, this is underneath services, so we got to make sure this is all tabbed in or spaced in twice. Beautiful. So this is going to use our variable for Docker directory here. It's going to be on port 9000. And we don't have to change anything else. So Control X, Control Y, or sorry, Control X and Y, and then Docker compose. And then we can run that again. You'll see it start to pull Portainer here. Awesome. So that's on port 9000. So again, we can test by going to :9000. Beautiful. That's all there. The next step is downloaders. So I don't really use torrents. I do use NZBs. What's the word there? Usenet. Yep, I use Usenet. So we're going to get back into our compose file, get to the bottom of it, and let's start with, so this is just a header here. So we just did our front end, Portainer and Nginx. These are kind of our back end downloaders. So let's get NZB get on here. And we're going to have to space everything in again. So this is going to be on port 6789. And it's going to download to this downloads directory here. It's going to download, it's going to get app data from here. So we're just going to store its config files. So Control X, Y, Enter. Put this up. All right, it's running as well. So again, back to Nginx, add a proxy host. So it's going to be called nzbgit.ourdomain. Name is nzbgit on port 6789. Oh, 6789. Block common exploits. Choose our certificate. Save. And there she is. Cool. What is next? Transmission, if you're using torrents, so this will set this up. You can also set it up because it has a built-in VPN kill switch. So inside of here, you can put your VPN username and password. So this would go inside of that .env file, transmission password, transmission username, and then you're just referencing it from here, as well as your, here he uses fastest VPN. They have some built-in ones. Private Internet Access, PIA, is the one I use. So that is built in there. You can set all that up. We're not going to go through that. Next to our recorders. So he calls them PVRs. I would call these media handlers or management. Does not matter. So let's get down here. We're going to add in our PVRs. This is all still under services, so it's all 2 spaces in. But we're just labeling it so we know where we're at. So radar, if you're not familiar with any of these, radar and Sonar manage your files. So when you request something, radar handles movies and Sonar handles TV shows. You request a movie or a TV show, radar and Sonar make sure your library doesn't have it. Then they go out and find it. They send that over to nzbgit or your torrent handler. It downloads it for you, puts it into your Plex media server, and then it scans again. Radar or Sonar scan again. Say, great, we have that here. So for movies, it's more of a one-time thing. For TV shows, it can maintain an active series. So it keeps checking, and if there's any new episodes that have come out, it'll download those automatically so that you'll keep up to date with the series. So there's radar there. We don't need to change anything. This is just showing where the media is going to download to. You would want to change this for, this is showing you what directories are exposed to this container. So when you go to do your settings for radar and Sonar, you're going to want to change these to whatever external hard drives or NAS or anything you're running. So you can go in here and expose those hard drives to it so that in your settings you're able to select those as your download folders. So we're just going to do these both at once here. That's going to be on 7878, and then Sonar for TV is going to be on 8989. Yeah. Cool. Control X, Y, enter. Let's run our Docker Compose. All right. We're getting there. Now we're getting to the big media servers. So I'm going to use Plex. You can use Jellyfin, MB, Kodi, whatever you want to use. He also shows here AirSonic Advanced for music streaming. I'm going to skip that for now. It's a music server. I haven't used it, but I do use Plex. So he does show here where you need to set up your page rules so that you can bypass the proxy on anything that starts with a certain word. So he uses Proxair, Proxplex, Proxjf, whatever he's using. I use so MyAir, MyPlex, MyJellyfin, whatever you want. But this lets you get around the 3-role issue. So anything that starts with that and a wildcard, it'll bypass the proxy so that you don't send your streaming stuff through the Cloudflare proxy and violate their terms of service. So again, back to our Docker Compose file, back to the bottom. We're going to call this media. Cool. And we're going to go down to the Plex option. Okay. All right, so for this, the only thing you're going to need to add, a couple things. If you are exposing different volumes to Plex, so you have different mounted drives, you need to put them here so that Plex can have access to them. And you need to put a Plex claim token inside of your env file for this. So the Plex claim token can be found. You got to go into your Plex login and watch some media, view the XML and your tokens in the URL bar up there. There's a ton of guides on how to get that, but that's what you need for that. So let's exit out of this. We're going to head over to our .env file. We're going to make a thing down here called Plex claim, and we're going to paste it in there. So you're not going to see mine, but it'll be in there, I promise. All right, so we got that claim token in. We are going to run our compose here. Oh, I did not set our server IP variable, so that is down here. That's going to tell it how to get to Plex, or where Plex is at. So if we go back into our env file, again, you're not going to see it. All right, so I just added to that env file a line that said server underscore IP equals, and then in quotes I put 192.168.1.5, so it knows how to get to it. So let's run that again. We don't get that error, so that's great. All right, to 192.168.1.5:32400. See, that works. Cool, so that would have me log in. The first time you access this, the server will either have to be on the local Plex server and use that, or you can access to 32400 web using the local IP address of it. You will not be able to do it with the domain. So, cool. Settings, it sees the server. We have remote access. This is great. Now, what we're accessing here though is a different Plex server. So I've got, as I said before, another Plex server running right now. So we're going to have to kill that Plex server until we get, to get this all up and running. So that ends the apps that we need to make all of this work. There's a ton more that you can add for functionality, for extended utilities, for music, for file browsing, for Docker logs, all that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff. But we're going to focus on transferring Plex over to a new server. So old server to new server, there's a way to do that. You can keep all of your user history. You can keep all your users on there. There's a little bit of a changeover, but it's not too bad. So on the next video, we're going to cover that. This gets all your Docker stuff up and running. The next video will cover the transfer of Plex from one server to another and the reset up of Sonar, Radar, NZB Git, and then we're going to install a thing called Overseer. And Overseer lets your users request titles, notifies you, and then will automatically send those to either Sonar or Radar. So you can go to your website, basically like a browse Netflix almost. You can pick which one you want, hit go, and it'll give you a notification. You can either approve or deny the request. So that's coming in the next video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll put a link to Anand's startup here. It's incredibly helpful. And yeah, thanks for watching.